leaked phone call just exposed Donald Trump in full meltdown mode, screaming at Pete Hegseth over the humiliating disaster that was supposed to be his glorious birthday parade. Coming up later, but the parade was just the cherry on top of a much bigger mess. Because the real damage, it's in the budget, and it's as ugly as that empty DC grandstand. Watch how this all starts to unravel right here.
With all due respect, I'd like your nomination. When will we see it?
There has not a single admiral or any military official has turned down a position that's been
So when will we see your nominee for the Chief of Naval Operations?
In due time, for all the right reasons.
Again, I think we've seen the managerial incompetence. Okay, let's move on to budgetary incompetence. You missed the deadline to submit a draft defense budget to Congress, which makes it impossible for us to complete our work on the NDAA or appropriations, and makes it more likely you'll receive delays in funding you need for new acquisitions, programs, and other priorities. Additionally, you're blowing money on poorly conceived operations and vanity projects for President Trump. Retrofitting the Qatari jet to serve as Air Force One will cost about $400 million. The parade in D.C. this weekend will cost upwards of $40 million. Your bombing campaign in Yemen cost about $1 billion, and a week later they were having missile strikes in Israel. Your operations in L.A. will cost tens of millions of dollars, and you claim to be cutting costs at the Pentagon, but all I see are wasted dollars better spent addressing our most pressing threats like China. So, Mr. Secretary, what priorities have you cut funding for to pay for these projects?
Ma'am, I would just say your list left off securing the southern border.
So, Mr. Secretary, what priorities have you cut funding for to pay for these projects?
We make trade-offs every day, and I would imagine what we want to spend on is quite different than what the previous administration did.
Well, I think
Made
the American
those changes quickly, and they're reflected in this budget, and we're very proud of them.
I think the American people can see why I'm so concerned about this incompetence. Thank you, and I yield back.
Ah yes, the Trump administration. The team that promised to slash waste, trim fat, and run things like a business. Well, mission accomplished if that business was a flaming dumpster behind a bankrupt steakhouse. Enter Pete Hegseth, Trump's budget guy, a man with all the fiscal insight of a soggy Post-it note. Mikey Sherrill absolutely torched him. Parade, $40 million, retrofitted vanity jet, $400 million, Yemen bombings, $1 billion, and still chaos. Pete's big response, the southern border. That's it. That's the answer when confronted with blowing through taxpayer money like it's monopoly cash. And when asked what priorities they cut to fund Trump's pet projects, Pete hit us with, we make trade-offs every day. Translation, we don't know what we're doing and we hope you stop asking. This administration's idea of budgeting, throw cash at Trump's ego and pray no one notices. And now we're about to see it. First with Congressman Jason Crow, and then the most expensive midlife crisis in DC history, Trump's parade and his meltdown because of it.
Let's just explain what's happening here. Right, so we're going to take 6,000 soldiers away from their family, away from their training. These folks are people that deploy all the time. We're going to take tanks from Texas, put them on rail cars and ship them to Washington, D.C. We're going to line the streets of Washington, D.C. with metal plates so those tanks don't rip it up. Right? All for the cost of over $50 million. Right? That is wrong. It takes soldiers away from their families, away from their mission. It wastes taxpayer dollars. I just don't have time for parades.
Jason Crow spelled it out with brutal clarity. This wasn't a parade, it was a $50 million ego detour. Tanks hauled in from Texas, metal plates slapped onto DC streets so Trump's toys wouldn't wreck the pavement, and soldiers pulled from training just to entertain a man who thinks Call of Duty is real life. It's not just the cost of the parade, it's the millions more needed to fix the damage. Also, Trump could pretend he's some kind of supreme commander to a mostly empty audience. And the best part, Trump knew how embarrassing it was. That's why he reportedly turned around and ripped Pete Hegseth a new one. And lucky us, the full meltdown is in the article we're about to see.
Trump reamed out Hegseth for flop birthday parade. Donald Trump was unhappy with his sparsely attended military parade over the weekend and blamed it on Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, biographer Michael Wolff revealed. Wolff told the Daily Beast podcast that Trump wanted a menacing show of force to celebrate the Army's 250th anniversary and his 79th birthday birthday on Saturday, but got a festive parade instead. He's pissed off at the soldiers, Wolf said. He's accusing them of hamming it up, and by that he seems to mean that they were having a good time, that they were waving, that they were enjoying themselves and showing a convivial face rather than a military face.
Of course, Trump was furious. His big, bad show of force turned into a birthday balloon party with tanks. According to Michael Wolff, Trump wanted something menacing, powerful, dictator chic. Instead, soldiers waving, smiling, actually enjoying themselves. Disgusting, right? So naturally, he blamed Pete Hegseth, because in Trump world, joy is weakness, and anything less than a North Korean military march is a personal insult. He was mad the soldiers looked like humans instead of stormtroopers. You really can't make this up, and now, brace yourself, because the footage from this sad, awkward parade, it's comedy gold.
As thousands of soldiers flanked by tanks made their way past empty bleachers along Constitutional Avenue in Washington, D.C., social media users pointed out that the soldiers were marching out of sync, and the muted atmosphere appeared to match the gloomy weather. When military men and women in uniform march, they march with tight timing and in lockstep as a sign of pride. These soldiers couldn't be further from marching in lockstep. It's clear that they don't want to be a part of Donald Trump's dictator parade and are just phoning it in, one Twitter user wrote.
This wasn't a parade. It was a slow-motion train wreck with tanks, empty bleachers, moody weather, and soldiers so out of sync they looked like they were dodging potholes instead of marching. Social media had a field day, pointing out that even the troops seemed embarrassed to be there. And honestly, can you blame them? This wasn't patriotism. It was performance art for one man's fragile ego. These soldiers weren't marching in honor. They were marching out of obligation, like extras in a movie no one wants to watch. And now, it gets juicy. Leaked Trump Hegseth calls, coming up next.
That didn't escape Trump, who pointed the finger at his defense secretary, according to Wolff. He kind of reamed out Hegseth for this, the Trump biographer said. Apparently, there was a phone call and he said to Hegseth, the tone was all wrong. Why was the tone wrong? Who staged this? There was the tone problem, he keeps repeating himself. It didn't send the message that he apparently wanted, which is that he was the commander-in-chief of this menacing enterprise, Wolff added. In response, the White House blasted Wolff once again as a lying sack of who has been proven to be a fraud. He routinely fabricates stories originating from his sick and warped imagination, only possible because he has a severe and debilitating case of Trump derangement syndrome that has rotted his peanut-sized brain, said the White House communications director.
So Trump was fuming, not over the cost, not over the waste, but because the vibe of his parade wasn't giving supreme military overlord. According to Michael Wolff, Trump called up Pete Hegseth and went full meltdown. The tone was wrong. Who staged this? Why wasn't it menacing enough? He apparently repeated himself like a toddler denied dessert, and in classic fashion, the White House responded with an unhinged roast of Michael Wolff's brain size. Very professional, but seriously, Trump paid millions just to embarrass himself. Happy birthday, Mr. Commander-in-Chief, and of course, this wasn't a one-time slip. Wasting money was the whole business model. Just ask Elizabeth Warren, because she's next and she brought receipts.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I want to ask about the Republican big, beautiful bill, which will knock about 16 million people off their health care coverage and cut programs that keep groceries cheaper for millions of families in order to try to pay for about $4 trillion in tax giveaways that are mostly going to be sucked up by millionaires, billionaires, and wealthy corporations. So, Mr. Besson, Secretary Besson, I'd like to start with a very simple question. Will this bill increase or decrease the deficit?
They're varying scoring on that, Senator Warren.
You're the Secretary of the Treasury, so I'm asking you. What is your view? Will this bill increase or decrease the deficit?
It is my view that over the 10-year window, it will decrease.
You know, do you have anybody who agrees with you on this?
Yes, ma'am.
Let me ask my question.
Okay.
Every credible independent expert agrees that Trump and the Republicans' big, beautiful bill would add trillions of dollars to the national debt and would not even come close to paying for itself. The nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office, the Penn-Wharton budget model, and the Yale Budget Lab all agree on this, and they're looking at 10-year windows, thank you. So do the Conservative Tax Foundation and Committee for Responsible Federal Budget, conservative groups. Even Elon Musk and the Wall Street Journal are criticizing the bill for ballooning the national debt. The only people who are saying publicly that it's not going to add to the national debt are you, Donald Trump, the Republicans in Congress. Do you have an independent group that has put forward numbers that disagrees with all of these conservative groups and disagrees with the Wall Street Journal on this?
Elizabeth Warren just laid waste to the so-called Big Beautiful Bill, which, surprise, is neither big nor beautiful unless you're a billionaire looking for a tax break. She cornered Secretary Bessent with a yes or no question about the deficit, and he started mumbling like he forgot what a calculator is. And the best part, every credible expert, from the CBO to even Elon Musk's Twitter account, agrees this bill blows up the national debt. Yet Bessent stuck to the script like his job depended on it, because it probably does. And now, get ready. Here comes his brain-melting answer.
Well, Senator, interesting to see you aligned with Elon Musk, but if I add...
You're no more shocked than I am.
If we want to take the full congressional budget scoring, they predict, and I don't agree with their methodology, they predict a $2.4 trillion deficit. But
okay, so the answer to the question is yes.
No, but may I finish? They include that, but they've also scored $2.8 trillion in tariff income. So even in Washington, D.C. math,
okay, so,
in Washington, D.C. math, that is a $400 billion surplus.
Okay, so let me make sure I understand. This bill, you admit, will increase the deficit by $2.4 trillion, but you think there will be another bill and another set of agreements that somehow materialize, haven't materialized so far, don't have any statutory authority, but that will make up the difference. So the answer to the original question, will this bill increase or decrease the deficit? I think you just said it will increase. This bill increases the deficit.
No, I want to use all the CBO scoring, and you can't take one without the other. I don't agree with the CBO.
One is the law that we are scoring, the bill that is in front of us. We don't have a tariff bill in front of us to score.
Elizabeth Warren just dropped truth bombs like she was clearing the Senate floor. Bessent tried to spin fantasy math, claiming imaginary tariff income would magically cancel out a $2.4 trillion deficit, and Warren wasn't having it. She nailed him. No tariff bill exists, no numbers add up, and the only thing growing faster than the debt is the delusion. His defense? Washington, D.C. math. This wasn't a hearing. It was a public economics beatdown. Warren made it crystal clear. The bill does increase the deficit, period. And now, strap in, because the last part is coming up.
Mr. Secretary, let me go on to the second question. You have said that government spending is, quote, out of control. You have also called government spending, quote, unsustainable. In fact, in the name of fiscal responsibility, you're working with the Republicans on this big, beautiful bill to pass the biggest cuts to Medicaid and the Affordable Care Act in American history. So, Mr. Secretary, help me understand here. Why is the national debt so very important that you're trying to kick 16 million people off their health insurance, but increasing the national debt doesn't seem to matter if you're cutting taxes for billionaires and billionaire corporations?
Well, first of all, a huge portion of this goes to family-owned businesses that are pass-through entities that are below that level, Senator, and I am sure you share my goals of Main Street prosperity.
You know, I'm glad to do tax cuts for people of modest means. The question I'm asking is, why does the deficit not matter to you? We're talking about knocking 16 million people off their health care, but it matters it does matter to you if we're knocking people off their health care, but not.
Well, first of all, that figure is overstated by 5.1 million. That is amount not attributable to provisions in this bill.
So you think it's okay just to knock 10 million people off their health care?
Elizabeth Warren just obliterated the last flimsy excuse standing. Bessent claimed government spending was out of control, unless of course that spending is for billionaires. Suddenly that debt is just good old-fashioned Main Street prosperity. Warren wasn't buying it. She asked what every sane person's been thinking. Why is it fiscally responsible to rip healthcare away from 16 million Americans but totally fine to hand out tax cuts to yacht collectors? Bessent's response: some ramble about pass-through entities and shaving 5 million off the number like that makes it fine? This wasn't testimony. It was deficit hypocrisy on parade. If you enjoyed watching Trump's team fumble basic math in public, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and stay with us, because the chaos is far from over. What's coming next? Let's just say it involves Trump, another disaster, and a moment that left even his allies speechless. Stay tuned.